About how we've gotten to this point where residents are now taking to the streets trying to prevent people from invading this piece of land?
Well, typical private sector failure. About 15 years ago, government reached an agreement with a private developer to develop the entire geographical space called Protea Glen, which would include bonded houses, which would include low-cost houses. And some payments were made to the private sector. They diverted the funds to bonded houses and, of course, developed infrastructure there. The project was launched publicly, but since then the developer reneged from, the initial agreements for development, and there's been an ongoing litigation between government and the private developer. Apparently, the private developer made an offer to government to settle out of court and offer the remaining land for development. But government also the view that government thinks that things have not gone according to plan and that somebody has to be accountable. And so there's been bickering in the courts about this particular matter until recently when residents now wanted to occupy that particular land.
So money has been paid to a private developer. Has any of that money been lost in this process?
In a sense, you can say that money has been lost because the money has not achieved what it was intended, all of it. All right, and I hear that the developer had given an offer to government to say that, okay, the remainder of the land that is available is actually even more than the money that government paid for the initial development of the entire area. So it's over in that piece of land. Now, these are the matters that I've got to sweep. These are the issues that I've got to clean up, so that there can be certainty around that particular area. And I'm going to be working closely with the city to ensure that this matter, and the premier, to ensure that this matter is resolved finally, and then we can move on,
and these are the
to develop that piece of land.
These are the issues that people who are waiting for housing don't know about. They don't know about the litigation going on between a private developer and government. All they know is that we're expecting to get RDP housing in this section of land. Years have gone by. We're not seeing anything.
Justified expectations from people that otherwise, the laws of our land says that we must deliver houses to them. So this is unnecessary bickering that will require me to act swiftly to ensure that this matters, find closure, and we can get into the business of developing that land for human settlement. It's massive. I mean, more than 35,000 people can be housed there. So this matter needs to be resolved so that we can move forward.
All right, so that's the legal issues around this piece of land. What are the geographical or geoscience reasons behind this piece of land not being developed? We're hearing reports that it is also dolomitic, that is also part of the issue here.
Well, Gauteng is endowed with, dolomitic conditions. As the Premier has explained, the other time in Lodium, there is a bad dolomite and a bad dolomite. There's a good dolomite, not good as in is fair that you can develop there. There's a very bad dolomite that you cannot take chances to put human beings there. Now, this is a continuous environmental impact assessment and geotechnical surveys that must be done by experts and technicians. And I think with regard to this particular land, such studies would have been done. And I guess that the report should be sitting somewhere in my department. After this interview, I'm definitely going to the legal department to find out exactly what is going on. Because I'm also looking for answers so that I can give concrete answers in matters such as this. But as I say, these are the matters that is now between myself, the Premier, and the City of Johannesburg. And once we have settled these issues, and it has to be time frames attached to this so that we sort this matter once and for all. If we go to court, let's go to court. If we settle out of court, let's settle out of court. But we are in a business of providing human settlement for our people, and we need to do that because that's what the Constitution of the Republic expects us to do. So but there is no excuse for people, no matter how desperate they are, that they can then create squalor for themselves as an expression of frustration. I don't think that is necessary. I do plead guilty that I may not have communicated effectively so that people can understand the complexities around why development did not take place as it was initially planned about 15 years ago. But of course, these are the matters as a new MEC that I'm seized with, and I think in due time I should find a way to solve these issues and move on with development there.
Well, that will certainly be the hope from the residents of Protea Glen, both the people who are waiting for RDP housing to get going in that area, in that piece of land, as promised some years ago, as well as the residents who have bonded homes there. We saw them taking to the streets over the past 2 days, saying that they don't want what you call people setting up situations of squalor, people setting up squatter camps around the area, because it will bring down the value of their bonded homes in that area. So given the tensions in Protea Glen at the moment on both sides, what do you do now as Human Settlements MEC? How do you go there and speak to both sides and placate both sides?
Squatting is definitely a deduction in the value of property. Not just the value of property of those that have got properties and they're investing in their properties, they are working hard to pay off their bond. It is a deduction on the value of property, definitely squatting, I'm saying. But low-cost housing, orderly developed and next to an opulent area, is definitely not a deduction in value. In fact, it's an addition. So, you know, this perception of negative equity, if you bring a low-cost housing next to an opulent, you know, area, is a deduction in value. It's just a wrong perception. It's definitely not true. I've traveled over the world. I've traveled to India. I've traveled to London. And I learned in London, in fact, that the original palace was in Windsor, next to Heathrow Airport there, as you move towards the west. And the king decided to move to Hyde Park. And the king-queen lives in the middle of London. And in Johannesburg, rich people want to live away from the city. So the question of negative equity is definitely just a wrong perception. But the owners of property there are justified to express a view that, no, you cannot put a squatter camp here. We know that this land is earmarked for formal housing, and we welcome people. And they are not saying they don't want low-cost housing next to them. They're simply saying, respect our properties. Do what government policy says it is doing. Build suitable houses for low-cost market, but those houses have to fit into our efforts as well as individual investors in our own properties. So I think their grievances is justified. My job is to speak to those that are looking for land. It's my business, and it's the Premier's business to ensure that those that are looking for land to, you know, to develop themselves, to build their own houses, for me to build houses for those that can build houses, actually receive the houses. But my job is also to protect the interests of those that have got houses and they are committed to long-term bonding and investment. So I need to find a middle ground between those that want the land and those that actually have got properties, so that there's stability in the housing market.
Because arguably the people on the other side of the argument, the people who are wanting the land, who are wanting the low-cost housing as promised, their grievances are also justified.
Absolutely, their grievances are justified. In fact, I'm very much sympathetic to those grievances, because my mandate in terms of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa is to work with municipalities to, you know, to make land available for those that can afford to build for themselves, those that can qualify for bond, those that can partially qualify for individual subsidies. You know, that is another market. My job is to provide space for those that want to stay in rented, you know, human accommodation. That's part of my mandate. But my most and part of the greatest job that is confronting me is to provide the houses for those that cannot fend for themselves, you know, to get the dignity of these people back. Now, there has to be order in that market, because these people have been indignified already. You know, their rights have been abused over time. They do not have shelter over their heads. Understandable. But we have to work in such a way that there is order, there is stability, so that no interest must suppress the interest of the other. We need to find a balancing act in this thing.
Will you be visiting the area at some stage, given that police are still there, that police are still keeping an eye on the situation?
I'm everywhere in the province where these things are happening. On Saturday, I was at Ennerdale, this Saturday on the 12th, and hopefully the mayor of Johannesburg will avail himself, because this matters concerns local government and provincial government. I have the budget in some cases to at least move in to develop this, but the city is not ready. For Eldorado Park protests, which is now more than 2 years old, the people of Eldorado Park says, for more than 23 years, we have not seen government delivering houses to our community. They are right. That demand is justified. Land has been found. The city needs to move in. I need to move in. The mayor says he doesn't have money. Of course, development of human settlement is not necessarily the mandate of local government. It's a mandate of national government, and provincial government is delegated responsibility to deliver human settlement. Now, the National Department of Human Settlement is in Gauteng. It has been here since the protest in El Dorado Park last year in May to work with the city and my department to ensure that we move forward to deliver human settlement for our people. What is now remaining is for the city to do what local government should do, so that we can collectively apply for urban settlement development grant and ensure that we get money necessary to develop infrastructure, and we can get down with the, the business of providing human settlement for our people.
Still such a mammoth issue facing us around the country. Thanks very much for coming in. That was Gauteng Human Settlements MEC Uhuru Moiloa joining us in studio.